2:38 a.m. and I'm completely unable to get to sleep. It's the officially the 26th of February. What a time to be alive this is. Stuck awake. Stuck awake again. Can't get to sleep. I wish I had Ambien, dude. If I had Ambien, this would be so much easier. It would be like smooth sailing from here. Um, but I'm stuck awake instead. There is no Ambien. And, I've just been ferociously yawning. Just waiting for some kind of sleep to be induced, but I know it's not gonna work. So, I was thinking about what I usually end up thinking about during these hours is loneliness, wanting to be around other people. Loneliness is a weird one for me because I don't have any real history of experiencing it. I've gone long, long periods, very long periods of extreme isolation without feeling it. And I don't think, the loneliness that's coming up nowadays is necessarily even that different than the lack of loneliness I had before, because it isn't particularly intense. It is there for a couple of hours, but usually goes away the next day. Or if it hasn't gone away the next day, it's always a feeling that I can ignore. It's not a feeling that overtakes me per se. The loneliness is there, the desire to be around other people in order to sort of distract yourself from the things that are going on, or just to have something to do, are very much there. Um, and it's always been weird for me because, I found using people as just a distraction as to be like a shallow way of doing things. Not even on principle, but it just feels wrong. Like, if there's something I'm running from, I'd rather face it head on, is my general mindset. And so the idea of, running away from it in order, but by talking to other people, like, I'm gonna be tired in the social situation because I'm tired from all the stress of the thing I have to do. And then I'm gonna be tired after the social situation. So it's just like all of this brain fog, bad feel, brain blockage. It's all this blockage you get in your head basically, where you have no desire to see anybody. You just want to curl up in a ball. Now that's how I get a lot of the time. But lately I've been getting more lonely. It's not an intense loneliness. I don't think it's going to overtake me. Whenever I've had little bouts of this feeling, they always subside quickly. And it's really only when I've stayed up later at night that I've thought about these things, because I just start checking, incessantly checking Discord. And I go through every single server that I'm in, and I click through and I click through, just trying to get some stream of information in my head, just trying to talk to somebody. Um, and I get increasingly incoherent at these hours because, like, when I haven't slept for long enough, I either completely lose the ability to care about anything, or I care about everything so much, you know? It's like I can't not go in either direction. It has to be one of the two extremes when I'm tired. And so I just sound weird when I'm tired. A lot of things don't come out right. And I'm not one to want to come out right. I don't really have a standard for these kind of things, but it definitely is different. Um, and, I don't know. I think really, one of these days, I really do think it'll be about time for me to have friends IRL. One or two, not more than three. I don't think I could do more than three, but just have some people who are within distance of people who I can connect to, connect with on some level, who are just around, comfy, play video games together, just whenever. People just randomly coming to visit. You interact all the time. When you can share someone you can share, deeper things with, secrets, this kind of stuff. You have something on your mind, you can tell them. Those are all very nice things. Now I've been getting this with one friend of mine. The only the only times when I get really, really, I guess you could say appreciative, like, oh my God, I'm so glad to have this person, is when the whole mask gets broken down and I can just be completely genuine with that other person, where I'm not hiding anything. There's no mask being put on to entertain a social dynamic. There's no lie being told in order to make sure I don't step on any toes or offend anybody. It's just completely genuine. And I try to be genuine on this channel, for example, in order to have that same quality. But there are bits and pieces, not really significant bits and pieces, but there are bits and pieces of information that I withhold. There are things that I won't necessarily give all of the details on. There are things that I may tune up certain details around in order to make myself look less bad, or just out of legal necessity, perhaps. There's all these little things, but well, I know someone is a really true friend. Like, I would I'd be I'd be willing to help you out with most things. Give you an arm or something for your help. Um, if I can tell you really, disgusting secrets about myself, just the visceral things that would get me into trouble. Well, there aren't very many people who I can do that with. Very, very few. There's one person in particular who, just that one guy knows all of these things about me that no one else knows. Um, but he's a schizoid, so he's not going to tell anybody. It's okay. What? I, I, I try to be truthful most of the time. And I think that's important. It's important to the kind of content I make. Um, my eyes have been watering so much. I just wanted to get to sleep. I'm up here thinking about loneliness. How nice it would be. I'm up here. I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with my life. Like most of the time, it's like overall life is fine. The things that make me the most depressed are just having to go to school or go to work. When those things are on my mind, it's like they take over my life. Like, I'm gonna be so glad when this waiting period ends, because I haven't gone to school since December, and I've just been waiting every single day until I get caught. Eventually when the day happens where I get caught, I won't have to worry about it anymore. But until then, it's a headache. it's not as much as a headache as actually having to do the work would be or to show up would be, but it still is a headache. And the consistent pattern I've seen have been that that the main root of a lot of my depressive tendencies tend to come from the environment that I'm in and whether or not I have to do work in school. No, those things have a severe bearing on my mental state. And you could call me weak for that. Oh. On some level, I am because the goal of any human being is to spread your genes at the base level, to have the strongest genes survive. And in order to do that, you need to adapt to your environment, you know? And right now, the current neoliberal capitalist environment that we have is something that I was just not made to adapt to. You can make that argument genetically. Is that my dad, for example, he dropped out of school when he was 15. That was when I dropped out. Um, you can make that argument culturally in terms of upbringing. The fact that, I made the video where I said homeschooling killed my whole work ethic. So there's a number of lines of reasoning you could go to that would disproportionately prove, I think at least, that the way that I'm meant to live or the way that I just naturally live is going to be considered lazy by most people, or at least out of the norm, at the very least out of the norm. I'm an outlier, and in, a more selfish society, I'd be dead. I'd be lynched, killed, or whatever for not providing resources. Um, but because there's so much material abundance, the political system can be dictated by ideas of enlightenment and individualism and allow someone like me to stay alive. That's not the way it always would have been. My genes would be extinct in a different society. Um, and so, by the metric that capitalist society gives out as the standard for what laziness is, you sure as hell I'm gonna be at the top in terms of laziness because I just vehemently refuse to do work. Um, and it isn't like out of necessarily just a choice. It's a feeling. Like suffering is relative. Suffering is relative to who's experiencing it, and different people are going to experience different levels of suffering depending on what it is they're experiencing. Now, for me, I experience significantly more suffering doing work than other people do. I experience significantly more suffering being forced to do things I don't want to do than other people do. That's a mental hangup I have, and I've gotten better at it through altering my mind state in the way that I think about things, process certain information, but there's only so much you can do on that front. A lot of this stuff is just stuff that's encoded into me, and I have to accept it. Um, it's just how I am. And so, in that sense, homelessness really is the best option for me because it was the inevitable option. I was thinking about this before I was 13. Before I was 13, I was thinking about the idea that I would eventually become homeless because it was just so ingrained to me that you have to finish school in order to get a job, and I didn't want to do either. I didn't want a job and I didn't want to finish school because I hated doing school even back then. That's why almost as early as I can remember I was cheating on it. um so no, loneliness is weird, right? Like, the person who you're hearing this perspective from is inherently going to be idiosyncratic because the experiences I've had have vastly differed from most people. Um, and so it's like what I'm talking about is different, way different from the norm. Um, and so I wouldn't worry too much about it. I wouldn't worry too much about the loneliness getting bad or setting in, as they say. But it has been there, if however shortly, If, however ignorable, the loneliness has been there, and I reckon I ought to do something about it